Welcome to The Defender, Wisconsin's environmental podcast, where we take a deep dive into our state's most pressing environmental issues. I'm Amy Barrilleaux. The Defender is powered by Clean Wisconsin, your environmental voice since 1970. We're back on the farm in this episode, and when you look at farming in Wisconsin, there are some alarming trends. First, the number of family farms in our state is dwindling. Between 1997 and 2022, Wisconsin lost a quarter of its farms, and for dairy farms, that number is even more bleak, with 72% lost. So what's going on? These days, big agribusiness and what are called concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, are taking hold while small family farms get shut out. And even if you're not a farmer, all this could still be hurting you. As farms consolidate and become more industrial, pollution coming from agriculture is increasing. According to a study from Clean Wisconsin and the Alliance for the Great Lakes, harmful nitrate contamination is on the rise in our waterways and drinking water. Nitrates are linked to serious health problems like cancer, and more than 90% of nitrate pollution comes from agricultural sources like manure and synthetic fertilizers. Add to that the cocktail of toxic chemicals used in insecticides and herbicides, plus the dramatic loss of our topsoil, and you've got a health and environmental crisis on the horizon. But before you get too depressed, if it's not too late for that, there are some innovative farmers who are working to turn things around, to create a new model of small family farming that puts health and our water and our environment first. In this episode, I talk with Chaz Self from Grassway Organics about the future of farming and where we all fit in, plus pizza. And that's right now on The Defender. It has never been easy to be a farmer, but these days, in the face of rising costs, tariffs, consolidation, keeping a small farm in business seems next to impossible. But there is a way to survive, and it might just be the key to cleaning up our water and saving our soil and protecting our health. I recently met Chaz Self from Grassway Organics on his farm near East Troy to talk about the urgent need for agriculture to work in harmony with nature. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know farmers are busy for talking to me today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
So you, unlike a lot of farmers I've talked to, are not a second or third generation farmer. So how did you end up coming here at a time when family farms are rapidly disappearing and deciding, I want to start a family farm?
Yeah. 19 years old. You can tell I don't look like your standard farmer, but very, very into the vegan hardcore movement. And my solution to environmentalism was being a vegan, which everyone kind of gets sold into at the time. You know, it's like the first step of introduction. But yeah, I didn't grow up on a farm, didn't set foot on a farm until I was 19. And I really, really fell in love with driving around Wisconsin and seeing the landscape full of dairy cows grazing. You know, you always remember, even in the early 2000s, you could remember that. And then now it's slowly gone or almost dwindling out to nothing. But yeah, that really drove my passion and love for cows specifically. And then the vegan part of it, you know, I was vegan the first 4 years I was farming, which was really, really unusual, milking cows and being a vegan. But it was really a push towards what the next future is going to be in, which ended up being regenerative. And then at 19, I went to school for everything I didn't want to do. So CAFO farming, corn, soy, the whole system that's built today. And over the years, we've lived in Norway, spent 2 years farming in Norway, milking 14 cows, which we love to do. And then came back. We expected our first son and fell in love again with Wisconsin. And started milking one cow, and then 2 cows, and then milked 3 by hand, and that was my limit of too much. And then we ended up taking over a retiring farm, which was what Grassway was up in Sheboygan County. Took over for that, worked for them for 9 months, then bought the business, bought everything except the land, and then rented for 1 year. And then after 1 year, we lost it to a higher bidder. So we moved down to East Troy, in 2017. It'll be 10 years next year.
Doing farming this way, which you called regenerative, is not the normal way in Wisconsin anymore. So tell me about what regenerative farming really means and what you're doing here on the farm, and I guess your perspective on why it isn't the way anymore.
Yeah, great question. We used to use the word sustainable, and we got out of sustainable because farming financially is not sustainable. And that is the real key of what sustainable is. You should be able to sustain the light bill, and you should be able to sustain your debt loads and stuff. We got out of sustainable using that word and got it into regenerative. And the regenerative definition that I always use is you put more into the soil than you take out. Why did farming become basically an agribusiness of mining? I call it mining. You mine minerals, you mine vitamins, you mine the soil until it's dead, and then you blast it full of chemicals that only certain plants can handle. And that's what really was surprising to me, why farmers switched that way, especially dairy. I have a real love for dairy, and dairy cows are meant to eat grass. They're meant to be outside. They're the perfect animal. They mow grass, they plant seed, they aerate soil, they spread manure. They're everything that mechanically has been replaced with cattle. But running to a regenerative system, the argument has always been is you can't produce, and I like to use the industry word, Olympians. So this is what the dairy industry calls Olympians. So a dairy cow in confinement, she'll produce anywhere between 100 and 150 pounds of milk with corn, soy, TMR rations, which is what is the current model that's really taken over the industry from a grass-based system. And with the CAFO system, that has produced 100 to 150 pounds on average, or if you're a good dairy farmer, it should be somewhere around there, with no grain and 100% on grass. We've never fed grain. We produce 35 pounds of milk per day. So we're 1/3 of the production of what these Olympians, they call them, can produce. So what is the drawback of producing an Olympian? Well, A, she doesn't get exercise. B, she's not outside. She doesn't eat grass anymore. So then what conservation always comes back to is, what's the biggest problem with CAFO is our manure, right? We have a shit problem, and it's really bad in the state. It's really bad, and it's the first time Green Lake had an algae bloom from the nitrate levels that were so high from spreading, and that really got into why did the system push for this high production, basically agribusiness, or CAFO is what we refer to as confined animal feed operations. And I used to be really, really mad at the farmers for doing it. But now I'm mad at the system that created it. And I didn't, I was born in the 80s. I didn't live through the first depression in dairy in the 80s, but everyone keeps talking about how farming just almost went extinct in the 80s. And it pushed the small guys out, and the small guys got out and the bigger got bigger. And now we're 20, almost 40 years later, there's very, very few. And I think Wisconsin in the year 2000 had almost 60,000 dairies, and now we're under 5,000. In 2026, and that we're also producing, I think, 3 to 5% more production with less farmers. So from a capitalistic business point, if you can have one farmer that milks, let's say 700 cows, except for, which is a great capitalistic system, there's a lot that you pay for on the back end. You actually don't do it. But for me, in a system where I have 2 employees that are milking, 58 cows, what's more efficient on the capitalistic side? And I think that's why that system has been so pushed nowadays, where farmers don't have a choice at this point. It's either you get big or get out. And I think the Secretary of Agriculture even said that about 10 years ago, to get out. And that's what's produced, the system we have today. And unfortunately, the only way that system is alive is through subsidies. And people don't realize that we're paying for it on both ends. And people are like, oh, milk's so cheap. Well, it's not cheap. And if you actually looked at, we just talked about this, if how could you actually put the real cost of a gallon of milk based on subsidies, it would be really cool to see, because how much money have we given? What's the environmental cost? What's going in through EQIP to try to put manure handling pits in? And what's going into all these systems that actually are not surviving without subsidies? And why are the subsidies still being pushed? And why is farming still going that way is, the $1 million question. And I wish it wasn't going that way, but unfortunately it is.
So you painted kind of a bleak picture, which I think is where we are in farming. The get big or get out. It's not really that farmers are advocating to have CAFOs. It's that they're in a system where if they don't have a CAFO, they can't make it. And so in walks you, not going to have a CAFO, wanting to do things a different way. Then how do you make it? I mean, I think the farm that we think about in the past with the barn and a couple of cows, and you all live there and you're all happy and you can make money and survive, that model is dead. It's not working. So what do you have to do to not be a CAFO, not grow, corn and soybeans, which are hard on the environment, certainly, and yet still thrive?
Yeah, great question. In my particular case is agritourism. I didn't grow up on a farm, so it was really important for me to be able to open my farm to people. Less than 1% of the American population works in farming, in some sort of farming. So the stories everyone always has, people don't have access to it, and now we're almost 2 generations away from it. So agritourism, what we do is pizza on the farm. So the original goal is to grow all the ingredients, be able to cook them on wood-fired ovens, open up our farm 2 days a week, and have people come out. We never in a million years imagined how big we are now. We were massive, probably the biggest pizza on the farm in the state. But it allows people to come to an actual farm, which is funny because our number one Google review is, it's an actual farm. Like, yeah, we're an actual farm. We're definitely dairy farmers with pizza problems. But financially, that's what keeps us going. And we still struggle even, milk in the grocery store. We just bought a gallon of milk that was conventional, and I think it was like $3 or $3.95 or something. And I sell my milk for $16 a gallon. And I still have a hard time making money, which is kind of difficult in farming because everything around is so expensive when it comes to farming. So how we survive and how I think the future of farming is going to be is agritourism and 100% direct to consumer. Like I got asked a question that really resonated with me was, if you could just pretend there's no stipulation, there's nothing, what does dairy farming in Wisconsin look like in 2050 to you? And, there's no stipulation. No, what did you say? I said 100% every single dairy would be grazing cows. No questions asked. There's no more CAFOs. So what would happen basically if we went to a system that went to grass base? You'd have basically the breakup of CAFOs, where now you have to go back to what we, people think about 50s and 60s and 40s when everyone would have 35, 40 cows. You'd be grazing, you have smaller systems, ecosystems that would support your local economies. How many problems would you solve? You have your conservation issues you'd have, no more poisoning, no more pollution of the rivers, the lakes. I mean, you would solve any issue, and it would be economically good for farmers to actually be able to survive on a small scale if we kept a local economy. But that's not where we're at. So I don't know if I got sidetracked there, but
well, yeah, it's not where we're at. But I think farmers like you, and I've talked to a few who are thinking about, well, how can we do our part to kind of get us there? When you take people out here, the tourists who come out here to the farm, do you talk to them about that, about where is their food coming from, and why is it important to kind of think about these big pictures, almost overwhelming issues when they make decisions?
Yeah. So I do farm tours every Saturday at 1 p.m. And it's funny the range of people you get. There's some people you meet that don't even know milk comes from a cow. And there's people that are really like, okay, let's get into the microbiology of your soil. And it always depends. And the dire issue that we're dealing with is the fact that nobody is awarded or nobody is doing well in the agribusiness world. Nobody. The environment's not doing well. The farmers were at the highest suicide rate we've ever seen. The farmers aren't doing good. The middlemen aren't doing good. Chemical companies are probably doing pretty well, especially now with immunity. And big agribusiness like, John Deere and some of the tractor stuff. But for the most part, nobody is awarded in this system. So why do we keep continuing to do it? That's the question you have to ask. And I think it really comes down to is like everyone, you hear this a lot. Where do you vote? Like if you're going to vote, okay, so do you vote with your dollar? Do you want to support the farmer that's selling his milk for $16? Can you invest in your health now rather than pay someone in the future that's going to help with cancer or health industry? And that mind shift for people is tough. And I mean, it's hard. The economy's hard right now. You have 2 kids. It's really hard to make the right decision. Do I go organic or you can buy organic, and in some cases it's not even better than conventional. What is better is going to the farmer, but are you going to pay $20 for a chicken? Are you willing to make that investment? Is that shift coming, and is that something you can explain to someone that's willing to vote with the dollar? And yeah, we do. It's just, I think it's very difficult unless you make that step. But most of the time when it comes to the tourism, it's health. Always comes back to health. And there's a lot of our customers that basically modern medicine has failed me. You're the next option, right? And so where is that health coming from? And I feel that health industry is really, really improving. I think what really has been challenging is there's so much to learn in this world. Like, farming is so complex, and it's very, very confusing to the consumer that doesn't live it. And I think that's also hard, because then you have capitalism that comes in and sells you what the easy route, which generally isn't always the best. And until you're really like either sick, I hate to say that, but until someone's like really like staring down at cancer or something's really going wrong, they don't think about what is actually going on with food. And that's, by that time, you're like, oh man, it's scary to think about. So is it changing? And as tourism, can we explain that and why that is important? Yeah, I think you definitely can. It just depends on, are they going to make, the vote to do it? That's the issue.
So we're sitting here at a picnic table on your lovely farm, plenty of places for people to sit and have pizza on the farm nights. Mm-hmm. What I don't see is any corn. And I drove past, I think, easily hundreds of acres of corn coming here. Wow. Do you think people realize what that corn is? That it's not human food, it's either ethanol or animal feed, and it's not as maybe natural and green as it seems.
Do people realize? I don't think so. Even myself in this world, I don't grow corn. We're 100% grass based. We don't grow grains, and if we do grow grains, it's for forage for cows, which before it gets headed out. But I did a interview with someone, and it was 27% of corn grown in the United States goes to ethanol. So at 27%, I did last year's math, that's 12.5 million acres. 12.5 million acres going through a gas tank is absolutely unfathomable. I have 400 acres and I can barely see what's going on in my ground. So to think about 12 million acres going into a tank is, I don't think people realize the magnitude of how bad it is. And I don't think they I don't know. I want to be optimistic that people are thinking about it, but I don't know where they would start. How do you even get involved with this? And the biggest ones right now is Bayer bought Monsanto, and people are like, okay, now they have immunity from causing cancer. We know it causes cancer. So are people really going to dig into is corn really causing me cancer? Unless you have cancer, you don't dig into it. Like, they're showing now studies in Iowa. Iowa is the most concentrated use of pesticides and herbicides, and they have the highest cancer rate. 100%. There's no argument. Are people going to actually really fathom these corn and this soy and what's going on? I don't know. And I feel part of it has to do with the poor farmer, right? Like, I hear this a lot. Oh, the poor farmers, which is true, because if you got into this system, you are on the brink of extinction at this point until farming dies. And I do feel bad for the guys that are in that system, but they got into it, and now it's like you either have the option to get out, which isn't going to really happen because of the debt load, because now let's just say you're a couple $1 million in debt, and you want to make a transformation like us to a grass-based system, man. Like, to take that risk now, I think is too much, right? Like, we're too far gone. Are there policies you could have and, that would be written to help farmers do it? 100%. And I feel Maha is trying, but here's a great example, especially with, Clean Wisconsin. You look at these guys that are like a cover crop. Oh my God. Even if your listeners don't understand it, cover crop is the most basic thing you should know as a farmer. Farmers don't even know about cover crops anymore. We're so many generations gone. But then all of a sudden, Maha is like, okay, let's put more money in conservation practices, which basically means cover crops. I know it sounds stupid, but it sounds cover crops. So these guys come in the fall after corn, they'll plant a cover crop, and then as soon as spring comes, what do? They spray it. So it's like, oh my, so you're like one step forward and two steps back. And is it better than not doing it? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, because it's great you have a cover crop, your soil's not getting in your neighbor's yard, but then at the same time, now you're adding more chemicals on it to kill whatever cover crop you have. So that as a farm scale, and to try to understand that there's so much going on that I don't think they realize that is what the issue is, and how can we solve it so quickly, or how do we even solve it and talk about it where people understand? And I don't know, man. I don't think they realize. I really don't. Maybe a few people that live by lakes or rivers that can physically see what's going on, I think they would, but the standard person, 9 to 5, both parents working, kids at home, last thing on their mind, right over the head,
Well, and because there's so much to worry about in this world right now, it's hard to worry about that cornfield you pass and what that means in a bigger picture farming scale for Wisconsin and beyond. But, there is a push, I think, to make things easier, at least for farmers like you who are coming in and thinking, well, I want to start this a different way. What would have helped you coming here the most? Like, is there any like legislation or help to get your cows out grazing, or anything like that you can think of that would have been like, yeah, man, that would have made my journey here a lot easier?
Yeah, there's a program that was created now. This isn't when I started, but it's called the Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship. It is a paid, basically, program. It's a 2-year paid program that you go through, which once you're done with the 2 years, it's an education course, in-field course, and you work with a dairy farmer that needs help, basically in a grass-based system. That was huge to see, because I just graduated 2 apprentices of my own, getting another one this year, and how important it is that they get full living wage and a place to live, and when they're done, they have the same ability of taking out loans that any other farmer does that goes through a short course or goes through Madison, UW-Madison, goes through university. That would have been amazing when I went, because I did it for free, and we lived in a yurt and a tent, and I mean, we roughed it out. It would have been sweet. As for legislation, I hate to pick on DATCAP because I'm in current litigation with them, but DATCAP doesn't make it easy, and the regulators that Wisconsin has had and been pushing for the last 10 years have not been helpful. And I don't want to say helpful. They've been somewhat cooperative, but they say their hands are tied when it comes to legislation, but legislators say their hands are tied because they take money from big dairy and big ag. So unfortunately, DACAP is in a position where if they're going to enforce rules that shouldn't be enforced on direct-to-consumer farmers, then either let's come to an agreement on what can be done. In my case, this is what I think we're going to get through in the next couple of weeks here to do it. But it would have been really, really nice to have legislation that helps and encourages people to do direct to farm. And to get away from that, you can't have a family butcher shop. And I love picking on the meat industry because those guys just got ruined by the state of Wisconsin. They just destroyed the family butcher shop because they're trying to put them in the same category as the Green Bay packing, which packs 7,000 animals a day. Like, they're not the same, and there was never legislation to break up what is a small scale and what is large scale, and now it's finally coming around. So you're like, all right, well, you push something and then it pushes back. We now realize the issue that comes with that. So yeah, the dairy grazing apprenticeship would have been great. Better legislation to allow us not through litigation, what we're doing now, and easier routes for farmers to get in situations. And I think there's a lot bigger issues that the state could focus on than trying to bust direct-to-consumer farmers on doing what they want to do. So
what does regenerative agriculture, which is basically cows out on the grass, limited, if no chemicals out there, what does that do to protect our water resources and our soil and all those things that we all would agree are important?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem, the shit problem. When you have grazing, the regenerative cycle, you basically eliminate that. And in Wisconsin, we can't graze year round. We're not saying there's not going to be some sort of confinement during the winter time, but moving to a grass-based system, especially close to rivers. I mean, you could think about let's just say, whatever we come to the number, 20-mile radius within that. There's no more pesticides, no more corn, no soy, no dumping. And I don't want to pick on the dairy guys, but there's sometimes when the pits aren't sized because they can't afford to build a big enough size, they'll sometimes spread on snow, which is 100% illegal in the state. We have this issue, but it's going to happen. That's just what happened. Who's going to regulate it? Who's going to tell them not? So even if we, let's say, to put a 20-mile radius on each major river, that you couldn't have any CAFO systems there or corn and soy, I mean, right there, you would eliminate. I couldn't even imagine how much you would eliminate there, especially when it comes to the manure. When it comes to a grass-based system, what also really surprises me is that it's economically viable for farmers, which is, why aren't you doing it then? And that's what gets me. It's like, okay, there's an option out there, but it's scary. It is scary. I'll be 100%. It is scary. And to make a decision, that's why it gets me, is we might be too late, right? Because every farmer is so far in debt that any wrong move in any direction, you're done, right? And so you're going to sacrifice the family farm for some new regenerative practice. If there's no money for it, there's no way you're going to do it. You're just going to continue to do the same. So to increase the grass-based systems, especially in this state, would be the number one issue to start at least cutting back on manure, right? Like you have this problem when it goes, and you have methane. And then on top of it, it gets down to like overproduction. Holy shit, let's just talk about overproduction. Dairy is the worst. It's the only industry that we overproduce a product and then complain about it not selling and then produce more, right? Because you have to make that certain product. So why is the government coming in every year and buying dairy products? Because no one buys it. The rest of the world doesn't want it. Nobody's buying it. So why aren't we not putting a quota on? So let's just say let's eliminate a little bit of corn and soy for some guys. Okay, so now we have to get to a TMR, which is a total mixed ration for a dairy. Let's cut that, corn and soy down. And let's go into some small grains. Let's do some other difference to get lower production. Oh my God, don't even talk about lower production with dairy, but you don't have to produce so much because it's not being sold. And that's what kind of ponders me is like, why are we building more? Same with corn. Like we grow so much food we put it in a gas tank. You can't even fathom that. And then I thought about 12.5 million acres. If we took let's just say 6 million, let's take half of the ethanol production and just put them in established prairies or pollinator habitats. Think about the change that would happen to this, even in the United States, that would happen with a pollinator habitat of 6 million acres. That would be wild to see. Dead zones would heal. You would start to have these issues. And I think the other issue too is that I hate this morning thing. We gotta feed the world. I hear that all the time. It's like, nobody's buying our stuff, so why are you feeding the world? That's not even an argument anymore. And if you're producing too much of it, why do you continue to produce more of it to have more suffer from the farmers and have all these issues? And then the government has to come in and buy or ship it or put it in a gas tank to figure out what to do with it. I mean, there's not a lot of people stepping up and saying like, we got to stop, right? And I think it really comes back to what earlier you said, it's the poor farmer. If you break your arm, and which is a big, political change, if we have a huge change in our farming system, it's just like breaking your arm. Tomorrow, I promise you're not going to be doing something, but it's going to take a while to heal. But once that's healed, the outcome is going to be so much better for everybody. But we all have to go through those growing pains. So
I guess the way to confront an enormous, difficult problem is just kind of like one step at a time. So, you mentioned that people can vote with their dollar. They can buy from their local farmers. They can come to a farm, see if this is a place they want to buy from. Is there, I guess, a group of y'all who are, out there for people to find? If people are listening to this and thinking, okay, I don't want to go to Costco or Walmart or whatever grocery store and buy a packaged chicken this time. I'm going to go buy it from a farmer, or I'm going to get, my produce from a farmer, all those things. Are there connections that people can easily find to places like this?
Yeah, especially in the protein world. I mean, it seems like most direct to consumer are shipping right to your house now. I think Amazon's really spoiled our population by getting it delivered straight to your house. We deliver nationwide now, so you can easily just Google, whatever protein farm. Vegetable farms are going to be a little bit more difficult because it has to be fresh, so that would be the farmer's market, or going to the farmer's market and meeting that farmer that's going to be willing to do something, or subscribing to a CSA when it comes to issues. But proteins, man, yeah, I mean, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and it's the World Cup right now, so everyone's talking about what's his name, Erling Stålund, and he's the Norwegian shooter. He's 6'5", drinks raw milk, eats organ meats, eats fresh eggs, and they brought 2,000 pounds of food from Norway to feed just their team because they were so sick of American food. And I was like, holy crap! It's like, we have that here, yeah, but it's hard to find, right? You have to get it, you have to search it for a little bit. So yeah, Seven Sons is one of the biggest farms in the nation. That basically they're a hub that buys from good farmers. And what's really great about Seven Sons Farm is that they've gotten so large that they can support the farmers that just want to farm. Farms like mine and farms that open themselves up really have to have a different mindset. What do they say? We're 2/3 farming and 1/3 marketing, because that's all you have to be that now, because to find that direct to consumer. So yeah, Google searching. If you're really into the Instagram and stuff like that, a lot of us do have social media that's getting that most farmers like to be on now. And the younger group, like the ones that were coming up, I like to refer to us as skinny jean farmers because we grew up in the skinny jean era, which there's a lot of us now, which is really cool to see that coming up. And yeah, doing some local research. And even if you can go to the farmer's market and then ask that farmer, most farmers are pretty in tide with their local farm community.
I mean, I know we've been having this conversation that's been kind of like all the frustrations, of our whole agricultural system in the United States. But at the same time, I think about when I was young, I'd never heard of a CSA or going to a farm and buying stuff or anything. You just went to your grocery store and you just got your plastic jug of milk or whatever, your chicken wrapped up in cellophane and you left. So do you see that progress, that there is movement, that we are starting to learn about buying local and buying from our farmers?
Yeah, this is, I'm coming up on almost 20 years of it. And I feel like when I started, there was a really big push, and maybe it's because I was in it. I just got in it. So maybe there is. And yeah, I do feel a little bit more with COVID. COVID really opened people's eyes to see. And, it's like as soon as COVID hit, they euthanized, 6,000 pigs in Iowa because they didn't know where to go with it. What are they going to do with it? And I think that kind of opened up people's eyes. And I don't like to pick on millennials because I am one, but now, most of us, if we're not having kids or grown kids, they're having kids. And that's when people really start to make that shift, right? And so boomers are, about the next 10, 15 years, boomers are going to have to either pass the torch on to either Gen Z or Gen X, or to millennials. And it seems like the millennials are the ones that should be making enough money, should be making the decisions, and should be able to make, some progress when it comes to that. And maybe it's coming up. Maybe our time is soon, coming up into our 40s soon. So,
well, Chaz, thank you for welcoming me out to your lovely farm and for talking about all this. I know it's like a complicated and difficult conversation, but it's one that I think more people need to hear. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out.
And thank you for listening to The Defender. We have a link to that nitrates on tap study in the show notes, and also a link for more information about pizza on the farm. You can also head to cleanwisconsin.org/podcast and click on this episode. I'm Amy Barrilleaux. Talk to you later.